My name is Cole Merrick, and I'm a security engineer who thought he understood how systems worked until my own life became the biggest vulnerability I'd ever encountered. The discovery happened on a Tuesday evening in October, while Mara was upstairs getting ready for another one of her networking dinners. I was in our bedroom looking for my old running shoes when I found her second phone. It wasn't hidden particularly well, just wedged beneath the cardboard liner of a shoebox in our closet, battery completely drained. The device was sleek, expensive, and definitely not the phone she carried around the house every day. I held it in my hands, feeling the weight of what this meant. 22 years of marriage, and here was evidence that my wife had been living a double life. The logical part of my brain, the part that debugged network security for a living, immediately started cataloging possibilities. The emotional part wanted to throw the thing against the wall, but I didn't unlock it. I didn't need to break any passwords or violate any privacy laws. I just needed to wait for the right moment. "Cole, have you seen my black heels?" Mara called from upstairs. "Check the hall closet," I replied, slipping the phone into my pocket. That weekend was Mara's 37th birthday party. She'd planned an elaborate celebration at our house, inviting everyone from her lobbying firm, plus neighbors and old friends. The guest list read like a who's who of the city's political and business elite. I spent the next few days acting normal, which wasn't particularly difficult since normal for us had become polite strangers sharing a mortgage. Mara worked late, came home tired, and spent most evenings on her primary phone, texting and making calls she claimed were work-related. Our son Lucas, 16 and sharper than both his parents combined, had been giving me knowing looks for weeks. He'd inherited my analytical mind and his mother's political instincts, which made him dangerously perceptive. "Dad, you know Mom's been getting weird calls on the house Wi-Fi, right?" he mentioned Thursday evening while we watched a baseball game. "What kind of weird calls?" "Video calls, always when you're not home. She takes them in the kitchen and talks really quietly." I nodded, filing that information away with everything else I'd been noticing. The late nights, the new clothes, the sudden interest in fitness, the way she'd started pronouncing certain words differently, as if she were rehearsing for a different audience. Saturday arrived with unseasonably warm weather. Mara had hired caterers and a bartender, transforming our modest suburban home into something resembling a campaign headquarters. Guests started arriving at 6, and by 7:30, our living room was packed with lobbyists, city council members, and various hangers-on. I played the dutiful husband, mixing drinks and making small talk about municipal broadband initiatives and zoning ordinances. Mara worked the room like the professional she was, all smiles and strategic conversations. Her inner circle had claimed the dining room: Tanya Morrison, whose husband owned 3 car dealerships, and Priya Singh, a corporate lawyer who specialized in regulatory compliance. These women had been Mara's closest friends for over a decade, and I'd watched them enable each other's worst impulses with the dedication of a professional support network. "Cole's been so supportive of my career growth," Mara was saying as I approached with a fresh bottle of wine, really understanding about the travel requirements. Tanya laughed, the sound sharp and knowing. "Oh, I bet he is. Some husbands get so jealous about business trips." "The key is communication," Priya added, raising her glass, "keeping everyone informed about expectations and boundaries." They were talking about me like I wasn't standing right there, which was typical. In their world, I was furniture with a paycheck, useful for maintaining the lifestyle, but not particularly interesting otherwise. I excused myself and went to the kitchen, where I'd left the second phone charging behind the coffee maker. The device had been powered off for days, maybe weeks. When I'd plugged it in that morning, it had taken nearly an hour to show any signs of life. Now it was ready. The birthday toast was scheduled for 8 o'clock. Mara had specifically requested that everyone gather in the living room, where she'd prepared remarks about gratitude and friendship and looking forward to new opportunities. I checked my watch, 7:55 p.m. Time to crash the party. I walked back into the living room carrying the second phone and a glass of champagne. Mara was standing near the fireplace, radiant in a red dress I'd never seen before, accepting congratulations and birthday wishes from the assembled crowd. "If I could have everyone's attention," she announced, raising her glass, "I wanted to thank you all for being here tonight. This year has been incredible, full of new opportunities and exciting developments." The room quieted, faces turning toward her with the practiced attention of people accustomed to political speeches. I positioned myself near the coffee table, where our smart TV was mounted on the wall behind me. "I'm grateful for the support of my colleagues, the love of my family, and the friendship of people who understand that sometimes growth requires taking risks." Tanya and Priya exchanged glances, smiling like they were in on some private joke. Several people from Mara's office nodded approvingly. "So, here's to another year of possibilities," Mara continued, and to the people who make it all worthwhile. Cheers, the crowd responded, raising their glasses. That's when I powered on the second phone. I didn't make a big show of it. I simply pressed the power button and set the device on the coffee table, next to the birthday cake and the pile of gift bags. The startup chime was soft, barely audible over the conversation, but Mara heard it. Her eyes found mine across the room, and I watched her face change as she recognized the device. The smile faltered for just a moment before she recovered, but it was too late. I'd seen the recognition, the flash of panic, the quick calculation of how to handle this development. "Cole, what are you doing?" she asked, her voice still warm, but with an edge that hadn't been there seconds before. "Just thought your phone might have some important messages," I replied, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "You know how work emergencies can be." The phone finished booting and immediately connected to our home Wi-Fi network. I'd configured our router years ago, and every device that had ever connected was still authorized. Security engineer habits. Notifications started appearing on the lock screen. Text previews, calendar alerts, missed call summaries. Nothing explicit, but enough to make Mara start moving toward me through the crowd. "That's not my work phone, Cole. I think you're confused." "Really? Because it's been connecting to our network for months. Same device signature every time." I pulled out my primary phone and opened the network management app. Our smart TV was connected to the same system, and I'd set up automatic casting for family photos and videos. Very convenient for sharing memories with guests. "Let me just check what's been syncing to our cloud storage," I said, tapping the screen. "Cole, don't." But I was already selecting the casting option. The TV screen flickered, and suddenly our family photos were scrolling in slideshow mode above the fireplace. Vacation pictures, holiday gatherings, Lucas's baseball games. Then the photos changed. The first image was a calendar screenshot showing appointments that didn't match anything on Mara's official schedule. Blocks of time labeled with initials and locations I didn't recognize. The pattern was methodical, professional, like a business schedule. "Oh my," someone said behind me. The second image was a bank alert showing a debt consolidation loan I'd never applied for. My name was on the application, along with my social security number and employment information, but I'd never seen the paperwork before. Mara was pushing through the crowd now, her political composure cracking. "This is a misunderstanding. Cole's been under a lot of stress lately." "Have I?" I asked, genuinely curious about how she planned to spin this. Because according to this loan application, I've been making some interesting financial decisions. The TV continued cycling through screenshots. Court documents with filing dates from 3 weeks ago. A sealed divorce petition I'd never been served. Asset transfer forms that would leave me responsible for debts I'd never incurred. The room had gone quiet, except for the soft murmur of people checking their own phones, probably to see if they were recording this. "Mara," Priya said carefully, "maybe we should turn off the TV." "Great idea," I agreed, but instead of stopping the slideshow, I opened the audio files. The first voice note played through the TV's speakers. Mara's voice, but lower and more intimate than I'd heard in years. "Tuesday works better than Wednesday. Cole has that late meeting, so we'll have the house until at least 9. A man's voice responded, "Perfect. I'll bring the paperwork we discussed. The transfer documents need to be notarized before the 15th. I recognized the second voice immediately. Derek Lawton, the ex-cop who ran a private security consulting firm and had been providing event security for Mara's office parties. He was standing near the kitchen doorway, his face carefully neutral. "Cole," Mara said, her voice rising, "you're making a scene. This is taken completely out of context." "What's the context for transferring our mortgage into my name without telling me?" The next audio file was more recent, probably from the previous week based on the timestamp. "The clearance suspension should buy us enough time," Mara's voice explained. "Once the divorce is final and the assets are transferred, we can move forward with a consulting arrangement." "And if he figures it out early?" Derek's voice asked. "He won't. Cole's brilliant with computers, but he's completely naive about people. He still thinks I'm the woman he married." The room was completely silent now, except for the sound of phones recording and the soft hum of the air conditioning. I could feel the weight of 40 pairs of eyes, some sympathetic, some horrified, some calculating the political implications. Tanya was the first to speak. "Mara, honey, maybe you should explain what's happening here." "What's happening," I said, "is that my wife has been running a long-term operation to destroy my financial life while positioning herself for a career change. The question is whether her friends knew about it." I looked directly at Priya. "Did you help draft those divorce papers?" Priya's silence was answer enough. The TV screen changed again, showing a map with a location pin near the federal building downtown. The pin was labeled Emergency Consultation, Embassy Protocol. "Embassy Protocol?" I repeated. That's interesting phrasing for a domestic relations attorney. Derek finally moved, stepping forward with the confident swagger of someone accustomed to intimidating people. Cole, I think you've had enough to drink. Maybe it's time to call it a night. Actually, Derek, I think we're just getting started. See, the interesting thing about digital forensics is that everything leaves a trail. Every login, every file transfer, every communication. I held up the second phone. This device has been auto-syncing to cloud storage for 6 months. Every message, every photo, every document. And since it's been connecting to my network, using my internet service, I have legal access to the backup files. Mara's political instincts finally kicked in. She straightened, smiled, and addressed the room with practiced authority. I apologize, everyone. My husband has been struggling with some personal issues lately, and this is clearly a cry for help. Cole, we can discuss this privately after our guests leave. It was a good strategy. Frame me as unstable, minimize the evidence, and rely on social pressure to end the confrontation. In normal circumstances, it might have worked, but I wasn't finished. You're right, Mara. I have been struggling. Specifically, I've been struggling to understand why my security clearance was flagged for review last month. Turns out, it's because someone filed financial disclosures under my name that don't match my actual income or debts. I gestured toward the TV, where a government form was now displayed. According to this, I've been receiving consulting payments from a foreign trade organization, payments that would require disclosure under federal ethics rules. And the room erupted in whispers. Several people from Mara's office were already heading toward the door. Derek's confidence evaporated. That's not what this is. Then what is it, Derek? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like my wife and her boyfriend have been setting me up to take responsibility for some kind of influence peddling scheme. Mara's composure finally cracked completely. Cole, stop talking. You don't understand what you're dealing with. Then explain it to me. Explain it to everyone. But she couldn't, because the next file on the screen was a chat log showing payment schedules and client codes that corresponded to pending city council votes. The amounts were substantial, the timing was suspicious, and the participants were identifiable by their phone numbers. Lucas appeared in the doorway, drawn by the commotion. He took one look at the TV screen, then at his mother's face, and immediately understood what was happening. "Dad," he said quietly, "should I call the police?" The party dissolved like sugar in rain. Within 20 minutes, our house went from elegant social gathering to crime scene, though nobody was calling it that yet. Guests made polite excuses and hurried exits, clutching their phones and already crafting the stories they'd tell tomorrow. Mara disappeared upstairs, claiming she needed to process this violation of privacy. Derek vanished entirely, slipping out the back door while I was explaining the situation to Detective Angela Mendez, who'd arrived in response to Lucas's call. "Mr. Merrick," Detective Mendez said, settling into our kitchen with a notepad and the weary expression of someone who'd seen every possible variation of domestic drama. "Walk me through how you found this device." I explained the discovery, the auto-sync process, and the legal technicalities that gave me access to the backup files. Mendez took notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions about timestamps and file origins. "The financial documents concern me most," she said. "If someone's been using your identity for loan applications or government filings, that's identity theft regardless of your marital status." Lucas hovered nearby, alternating between protective concern for me and obvious disappointment in his mother. At 16, he was old enough to understand the implications, but young enough to be genuinely shocked by the scope of Mara's deception. "Dad, there's something else," he said during a break in my conversation with Mendez. "Mom's been getting packages delivered to Mrs. Patterson's house across the street. I saw her picking them up last week." Detective Mendez looked up from her notes. "What kind of packages?" "Legal-sized envelopes. Maybe documents?" I walked to the front window and looked across the street at the Patterson house. Mrs. Patterson was 83, lived alone, and had been accepting packages for neighbors for decades. It was a perfect mail drop for someone who didn't want deliveries traced to their primary address. "We should talk to her," Mendez said. But when we knocked on Mrs. Patterson's door, she was already waiting with a cardboard box full of envelopes addressed to M. Lawton at her address. She'd been wondering when someone would come asking about them. "That nice girl across the street asked if she could have some packages delivered here while she was having work done on her mailbox," Mrs. Patterson explained. "But that was months ago, and I kept seeing her husband coming and going like normal, so I figured something wasn't right." Monsieur Lawton. Mara Lawton. She'd been using Derek's last name for official correspondence. Detective Mendez photographed the envelopes before opening them, bank statements for accounts I'd never heard of, insurance policies listing Derek as the beneficiary, a lease agreement for an apartment downtown that had been active for 8 months. "Mr. Merrick," Mendez said, "I think we need to have a more formal conversation about this situation. Would you be willing to come to the station tomorrow to file a complaint?" I agreed, though I suspected the legal process would be slower and less satisfying than the public humiliation Mara had just experienced. The real damage was already done. Her career in lobbying depended on trust and reputation, both of which had been destroyed in front of her professional network. After Mendez left, I found Mara in our bedroom, packing a suitcase with mechanical precision. She'd changed out of the red dress into jeans and a sweater, and her makeup was gone, leaving her looking younger and more vulnerable than she had in years. "Where will you go?" I asked. "Derek has a place downtown. We'll figure it out." "The apartment on 5th Street? I saw the lease agreement." She stopped packing and looked at me with something that might have been respect. "You really did find everything." "Most of it. I'm still trying to understand the embassy connection." Mara sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking exhausted. "It's not what you think. Derek has consulting contracts with trade organizations. Legal work, mostly regulatory compliance. The embassy thing was just a contingency plan in case the divorce got complicated." "Contingency plan for what?" "For disappearing if we had to." The casual way she said it hit me harder than all the financial betrayal. She'd been prepared to abandon not just our marriage, but our son, our entire life, if her scheme had been discovered through official channels. "What about Lucas?" "He could have visited. We weren't planning to leave the country permanently." "You were planning to leave the country at all?" Mara shrugged, a gesture that encompassed 22 years of shared history, and dismissed all of it as inconvenient detail. "Derek has business interests in Canada. The consulting work pays better there, and the extradition treaties are more complicated." I sat in the chair by our bedroom window, looking out at the house where we'd raised our son and built what I'd thought was a stable life. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since Derek's divorce was finalized. About 18 months. "And the financial stuff? The loans, the debt transfers?" "Derek's idea. He said if we were going to start over, we needed to make sure you couldn't come after us for support or asset division. Better to leave you with the debts and start clean." The matter-of-fact explanation was somehow worse than anger would have been. This wasn't a crime of passion or a moment of weakness. It was a calculated business decision executed with professional competence over the course of nearly 2 years. "Mara, you do realize this is going to destroy both your careers?" "Derek's been planning to leave the security business anyway. Too much oversight, too many regulations. The trade consulting pays better and has fewer restrictions." "And you?" "I'll figure something out. I always do." She resumed packing, folding clothes with the same methodical care she brought to political campaigns. I watched her prepare to abandon our life together and felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete clarity about who she really was. Lucas appeared in the doorway, holding his laptop. "Dad, you need to see this." The screen showed a social media feed where videos from the party were already circulating. Someone had recorded the audio files playing through our TV, and the footage was being shared with commentary about corruption in city politics. "It's gone viral," Lucas said. "Mom's name is trending on Twitter." Mara looked at the screen, and for the first time since I'd powered on the second phone, she seemed genuinely shaken. Social media moved faster than legal processes, and by morning, everyone in the city would know about the bribery allegations and the divorce scheme. "I need to call my office," she said. "It's Saturday night, Mara, and I don't think they're going to want to hear from you anyway." She tried calling anyway. The phone rang once before going to voicemail. She tried 3 more numbers with the same result. Word had already spread through her professional network, and the damage control had begun without her. "Pack whatever you need," I said, "but understand that this house, the cars, the bank accounts, everything's going to be frozen pending the investigation. Derek's apartment might be your only option for a while." Mara nodded, zipped the suitcase, and stood by the bedroom door. For a moment, she looked like she wanted to say something, maybe apologize or explain or justify what she'd done. Instead, she said, "The mortgage payment is due on the 15th. Don't forget." Then she left, carrying her suitcase and the wreckage of her carefully constructed alternate life. Monday morning brought reporters to my front yard and a suspension notice from Mara's lobbying firm. The reporters were easy enough to handle. I gave a brief statement about cooperating with law enforcement and referred all questions to my attorney. The suspension notice was more interesting because it revealed how quickly Mara's professional world had moved to distance itself from the scandal. Lucas and I developed a routine for dealing with the media attention. He left for school through the back gate, cutting through the neighbor's yard to avoid the cameras. I worked from home, using my company's remote access protocols to handle my security engineering responsibilities while managing the legal fallout. Detective Mendez called Tuesday afternoon with an update. We've identified at least 12 instances of identity theft related to the loan applications. The Financial Crimes Unit is taking over that aspect of the investigation. What about the bribery allegations? That's more complicated. The chat logs show payments and client codes, but we need to connect them to specific legislative actions. The city council is cooperating, but it's going to take time to build a case. Derek had made himself scarce since Saturday night. His security consulting office was closed, his apartment appeared empty, and his phone went straight to voicemail. I suspected he was either consulting with attorneys or implementing whatever exit strategy he and Mara had prepared for this scenario. Mara, meanwhile, had become a ghost in her own life. Her social media accounts went dark, her office voicemail message was changed to refer callers to a general number, and none of her friends would admit to knowing where she was staying. The exception was Priya Singh, who called me Wednesday evening with what she probably thought was a reasonable proposal. "Cole, we need to talk about damage control," she said without preamble. "This situation is hurting everyone involved, including Lucas." "I'm listening." Mara made some poor choices, but destroying her career doesn't help anyone. If you're willing to characterize this as a marital dispute rather than criminal activity, we might be able to minimize the legal consequences for everyone. In exchange for what? Clean divorce, fair asset division, and Mara drops any claim to ongoing support. You keep the house, she keeps her retirement accounts, and Lucas stays with you. It was a reasonable offer from a legal perspective, but it ignored the fundamental issue. Priya, your client committed identity theft and was involved in a bribery scheme. This isn't a marital dispute. The bribery allegations are speculative. The identity theft was technically between spouses, which complicates the prosecution. A good defense attorney could argue that Mara had implied consent to use your financial information for household management purposes. Household management doesn't include secret apartments and fake loan applications. Cole, be practical. Do you really want to spend the next 2 years in court fighting over this? Do you want Lucas to watch his mother go to prison? I considered the question seriously. The legal process would be expensive, time-consuming, and emotionally draining for everyone involved. Lucas was already struggling with the public nature of the scandal, and a prolonged criminal case would make everything worse. But letting Mara escape consequences would send a message that elaborate betrayal was just another form of marital discord, something to be resolved through negotiation rather than accountability. "I'll think about it," I told Priya. Thursday brought a development that made the decision easier. Detective Mendez called with news that Derek Lawton had been arrested at the Canadian border trying to cross with a fake passport and $23,000 in cash. "He's talking," Mendez said, trying to minimize his own exposure by providing details about the consulting arrangement and the financial scheme. Some of what he's saying contradicts your wife's version of events. "How so?" According to Derek, the identity theft and debt transfers were Mara's idea, not his. He claims she approached him with the plan after they started their relationship, and he just provided technical assistance. That sounded like the Mara I'd been married to for 22 years. She'd always been the strategist in our household, the one who planned vacations, managed finances, and thought 3 moves ahead in any situation. Derek's role as the ex-cop security consultant had probably been limited to execution and muscle. What happens now? Derek's looking at federal charges for the passport fraud, plus state charges for identity theft and conspiracy. If he's willing to testify against Mara in exchange for a reduced sentence, the prosecution might be interested. Friday afternoon, Mara finally called me directly. "Cole, we need to meet. There are things you don't understand about this situation." "Such as?" Derek wasn't just my boyfriend. He was working for people who have a lot of influence in this city. The consulting contracts, the trade organization payments, that was all legitimate business that got complicated when our personal relationship became public. Legitimate business that required fake passports and secret bank accounts. Derek panicked when the story broke. He made some bad decisions trying to protect clients who value discretion. I almost admired her ability to reframe criminal conspiracy as a customer service issue. "Mara, Derek's been arrested. He's talking to federal investigators. Whatever story you're trying to construct isn't going to hold up." "That's why we need to meet. I can explain the parts Derek doesn't understand, the political context that makes this more complicated than it appears." "Where are you?" "Downtown, the Marriott on 3rd Street, room 847. I agreed to meet her that evening, though I called Detective Mendez first to inform her about the conversation. She suggested I record the meeting, which was legal in our state as long as one party consented. The Marriott was the kind of mid-range business hotel that hosted political fundraisers and corporate conferences. Room 847 was a standard suite with a view of the federal building where Derek had probably been planning to seek asylum before his arrest. Mara answered the door, wearing a hotel bathrobe and looking like she hadn't slept in days. The confident political operative who'd worked the room at her birthday party was gone, replaced by someone who looked genuinely desperate. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing toward the sitting area. "I know this is difficult for everyone." "Start with the truth, Mara, all of it." She poured herself a glass of wine from a bottle on the coffee table and settled into the chair across from me. "Derek and I met at a city council meeting 18 months ago. He was providing security for a trade delegation, and I was lobbying for zoning changes that would benefit their development project." "Go on." "The relationship started as professional collaboration. Derek's clients needed someone who understood local politics, and I needed access to international business networks. It was mutually beneficial." "When did it become personal?" "After Derek's divorce was finalized. We were working late on a particularly complex regulatory issue, and things just developed naturally." The euphemism was typical Mara, reducing an extramarital affair to natural development, like it was an inevitable business outcome. "What about the financial scheme?" "That was Derek's suggestion, but I agreed to it. He said if we were going to build a life together, we needed to make sure you couldn't interfere with our business relationships or our financial independence." "By destroying my credit and framing me for crimes I didn't commit?" "By creating legal separation between our old lives and our new opportunities. The debt transfers were meant to be temporary, just until the divorce was finalized and we could clean up the financial complications." "And the bribery?" Mara was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the city lights. "The consulting payments were legitimate. Derek's clients pay for regulatory guidance and political intelligence, but some of the methods we used to gather that intelligence were ethically questionable." "Meaning what?" "Meaning we had access to information before it was public, and we used that access to advise clients on investment and development decisions." "That's called insider trading, Mara." "In the financial sector, yes. In municipal politics, it's called consulting." I activated the recording app on my phone, making sure the microphone was positioned to capture our conversation clearly. "Tell me about the embassy protocol." "Derek's clients include some foreign nationals who prefer to avoid publicity. The embassy connection was just a way to ensure confidential communication if the consulting arrangement became subject to legal scrutiny." "You mean if you got caught?" "If our business activities were mischaracterized by people who don't understand international trade law." Even facing federal investigation, Mara couldn't abandon her political instincts. Every criminal act was reframed as a misunderstanding. Every betrayal was repositioned as a business decision. Every lie was presented as a communication strategy. "Mara, Derek's been arrested with a fake passport and $23,000 in cash. How do you mischaracterize that?" "Derek made poor choices when he felt threatened. That doesn't invalidate the legitimate aspects of our business relationship." "What about our marriage? Was that also a business relationship?" For the first time since I'd arrived, Mara looked genuinely emotional. "Cole, I never meant for things to get this complicated. When Derek and I started working together, I thought I could manage both relationships without anyone getting hurt." "But you couldn't." "No, I couldn't." I stood to leave, but Mara grabbed my arm. "Cole, there's something else. Something Derek doesn't know." "What?" "The people he was working for. They're not going to let this scandal destroy their business interests. If Derek testifies against me, if this investigation expands to include the trade organization, there could be consequences for everyone involved." "Are you threatening me?" "I'm warning you. These are serious people with serious money at stake. They don't resolve problems through the legal system." "Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to steal my identity and frame me for your crimes." I left her in the hotel room with her wine and her warnings, but I understood what she was really telling me. The scandal that had started as a domestic betrayal was about to become something much more dangerous. The warning proved prophetic. Saturday morning, I woke to find my car vandalized, tires slashed, windows broken, and "Keep Quiet" spray-painted across the windshield. Lucas discovered the damage when he went out to get the newspaper, and his reaction was immediate and practical. "Dad, we need better security. Like professional-grade security." He was right. I spent the weekend installing motion-activated cameras, upgrading our door locks, and setting up a monitoring system that would alert us to any unusual activity around the house. My background in network security proved useful for designing a comprehensive surveillance setup. Detective Mendez took the vandalism seriously, especially after I shared the recording of my conversation with Mara. "The threat about serious people is concerning. We're going to increase patrols in your neighborhood and expedite the investigation. Monday brought news that Derek had been transferred to federal custody and was cooperating fully with investigators. According to Mendez, his testimony was providing details about a network of foreign nationals who'd been using Derek's security consulting firm to gather intelligence on municipal development projects. It's bigger than we initially thought, Mendez explained during a phone briefing. The trade organization your wife mentioned is connected to at least 3 ongoing federal investigations into foreign influence operations. What does that mean for Mara? It means she's potentially facing federal charges in addition to the state charges for identity theft and conspiracy. The prosecutor is treating this as a national security issue now. Tuesday afternoon, Priya Singh called again, but this time her tone was different, urgent rather than negotiational. Cole, Mara needs to speak with you immediately. There's been a development that changes everything. What kind of development? Someone broke into her hotel room last night. They didn't take anything, but they left a message. I met Mara at a different hotel, a budget place near the airport where she'd relocated after the break-in. She looked haggard and genuinely frightened, a dramatic change from the composed political operative I'd known for over 2 decades. They want me to disappear, she said without preamble. Leave the country, abandon the investigation, and never come back. Who wants that? Derek's clients, the people who were paying for regulatory intelligence. And if you don't disappear? They made it clear that staying would be problematic for everyone involved, including you and Lucas. I sat across from her in the hotel's cramped business center, studying her face for signs of manipulation or performance. What I saw instead was genuine fear and something that might have been regret. Mara, you created this situation. You made the decision to get involved with Derek and his clients. You chose to steal my identity and frame me for crimes I didn't commit. Why should I help you now? Because if something happens to me, you and Lucas could be next. These people don't distinguish between willing participants and inconvenient witnesses. Then maybe you should cooperate with the federal investigation. Give them everything you know about Derek's clients and their operations. I can't. I don't have enough information to satisfy investigators, but I have too much information to satisfy Derek's clients. I'm caught between 2 groups of people who want me to do contradictory things. It was a classic Mara problem. Too clever by half, trapped by her own strategic maneuvering. She'd positioned herself as essential to both sides of the conflict without securing loyalty from either side. What do you want from me? Help me disappear properly. Use your security background to create a clean exit that doesn't leave traces for either the investigators or Derek's clients. You want me to help you flee the country? I want you to help me survive long enough to figure out a solution that protects everyone. I considered the request. Helping Mara escape would make me an accessory to her crimes and potentially obstruct a federal investigation. But allowing her to be eliminated by foreign operatives would leave Lucas without a mother and me with permanent security concerns. There's a third option, I said, which is controlled cooperation. You work with federal investigators to provide information about Derek's clients, but you do it from a secure location with witness protection protocols. The investigators won't agree to that. They want complete cooperation, not partial information. Then give them complete cooperation. Cole, I don't have complete information. Derek compartmentalized everything. I knew about specific projects and payments, but I never had access to the full network or the overall strategy. What do you have? Mara pulled a flash drive from her purse and set it on the table between us. Financial records, communication logs, and client codes for 18 months of consulting projects. It's enough to identify some of Derek's clients and trace some of the payments, but it's not enough to map the entire operation. It's a start. It's a target. The moment I hand this over to investigators, Derek's clients will know I'm cooperating. The break-in at my hotel room was a warning. The next contact won't be so subtle. I picked up the flash drive and examined it. Standard hardware, probably containing standard files, but representing information that multiple groups of dangerous people considered valuable enough to threaten and intimidate for. Mara, you have to choose. Either you're part of the solution or you're part of the problem. There's no middle ground where you get to protect yourself while leaving everyone else exposed. And if I choose cooperation and end up disappeared anyway, then at least you'll have done the right thing for once. She laughed bitterly. Ah, the right thing. Cole, I stopped believing in the right thing about 2 years ago. Politics is about managing competing interests, not about moral absolutes. This isn't politics anymore. This is criminal conspiracy involving foreign intelligence operations. The rules are different. The rules are always different when you're losing. I stood to leave, but Mara grabbed my hand. Cole, whatever you think of me personally, Please don't let Lucas get hurt because of my mistakes. Then stop making mistakes. Cooperate with the investigation, provide everything you know, and trust the system to protect you. The system doesn't protect people like me. The system protects people like Derek's clients, people with money and influence and the ability to make problems disappear. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you decided to work for them. I left her in the hotel business center with the flash drive and her impossible choices. But as I drove home, I realized that her problems had become my problems whether I wanted them to or not. Lucas and I were now potential targets in a conflict we hadn't chosen and couldn't avoid. Wednesday morning brought the resolution I'd been dreading. Detective Mendez called with news that Mara's body had been found in her hotel room, apparently the victim of a robbery gone wrong. Her purse was missing, along with her phone and laptop, but nothing else in the room had been disturbed. I'm sorry, Cole. I know this complicates everything for you and Lucas. It did complicate everything, but not in the way Mendez probably meant. Mara's elimination removed a witness and a source of information, but it also sent a clear message about the consequences of cooperation with federal investigators. Lucas took the news with the stoic composure of someone who'd already processed the loss of his mother when her betrayal was revealed. Dad, are we safe? I don't know, but we're going to make sure we are. I spent the rest of the week implementing additional security measures and cooperating with the expanded federal investigation. The flash drive Mara had shown me was never recovered from her hotel room, which meant either the investigators had it or Derek's clients had eliminated the evidence along with the witness. The case against Derek expanded to include charges related to Mara's elimination, but without her testimony and the missing financial records, the prosecution's ability to connect him to the broader foreign influence network was limited. 6 months later, Derek pled guilty to identity theft and conspiracy charges in exchange for a 15-year sentence. The foreign nationals who'd been paying for regulatory intelligence were never identified or charged, and the trade organization Derek had been working for dissolved and reformed under a different name in a different jurisdiction. Lucas and I moved to a different city, where I took a position with a cybersecurity firm that specialized in protecting witnesses and whistleblowers. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd become an expert in the kind of protection Mara had needed, but been too proud or too frightened to accept. The house where we'd raised Lucas and where Mara had planned her elaborate betrayal was sold to cover the legal expenses and debt obligations she'd created. The new owners renovated extensively, removing most traces of our family's 22 years there. I kept the second phone as a reminder of how much damage could be contained in a device small enough to hide in a shoebox. Sometimes I powered it on just to see the login screen, remembering the moment when everything changed and wondering if there had been a different choice that would have saved everyone involved, but mostly I focused on the future, on building a life with Lucas that was based on transparency rather than strategy, on trust rather than manipulation. It was harder than Mara's approach, but it was sustainable in ways that her elaborate schemes had never been. The scandal faded from public attention, replaced by newer outrages and fresher betrayals. The city council implemented new ethics rules and transparency requirements, though whether those changes would prevent future corruption was an open question. Derek's security consulting firm was dissolved, and the office building where he'd operated was converted to condominiums. The apartment where he and Mara had planned their new life together was rented to a young couple who knew nothing about its history. And somewhere, the serious people with serious money that Mara had warned me about continued their operations with new consultants and new methods, having learned valuable lessons about operational security and witness management. The only victory was that Lucas and I survived, and that the truth about Mara's betrayal became public record rather than family secret. It wasn't the ending I'd planned when I powered on that second phone during her birthday toast, but it was the ending that her choices had made inevitable. Justice, I learned, wasn't always about punishment or redemption. Sometimes it was just about making sure the truth was documented and the consequences were distributed fairly among the people who'd earned them. In the end, that was enough.